Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. It is Mindset Reset Monday, you guys. Good morning. Good morning. How to keep going when life doesn't go as planned. That is our conversation this morning. How to keep going when life doesn't go as planned. You know that our focus this month, our series is seizing control of your life with a plan. And this week we're talking about navigating your obstacles, really prepare for challenges, pivoting with grace, and preserving or persevering with strategy, you guys. So, the emotional focus this week is going to be resilience, flexibility, faith in the process, right? And just adding grit with grace, okay? Grit with grace. Why does this matter? Or why does this week matter? Why did I add this to the plan? Because anyone can move forward when everything is smooth, you guys. Anyone can move forward when everything is smooth. But real agency, real strength, real resistance, real resilience, right? The kind of power that sustains you really comes from learning how to navigate disruptions without self abandonment, right? Navigating disruptions without self abandonment, you guys. This is about moving with wisdom, even when plans shift, when doors close, right? When life really feels messy. All right, listen, what I need you to know, good morning, good morning. What I need you to know is when life doesn't go according to your plan, guess what? Most people unconsciously start writing stories in their minds. All right. And those stories usually sound like, I must have done something wrong, right? Maybe it just wasn't meant for this, or maybe I just wasn't meant for this. Everything good falls apart, right? Everything good falls apart eventually, right? I got this feeling that the other shoe is gonna drop, right? I'm always messing up things or always mess things up, and it's too late to fix this. All right, listen, the stories you create become the identity that you carry. All right. The stories that you create become the identity that you carry, and that identity determines whether you stop or really keep going. All right. So here's the truth, the story you tell yourself about your setbacks, they matter, you guys, more than the setbacks themselves. All right. So you are either making the disruption about your worth, or you're making the disruption about your growth, right? One shrinks your spirit, right? And the other really strengthens your resilience. You guys, listen, good morning, good morning. We already know that week one, I taught you about values, right? Um, we went through the values that matter the most, right? And then in week two, we aligned your vision with your goals by really tucking them under those universal truths. And then week three, I help you really act in purpose, right? Not in fear. But this week, now week four, you'll learn how acting in purpose doesn't really guarantee easy roads, you guys, but it guarantees meaningful movement. All right. This lesson really reframes set, setbacks as sacred, listen, as sacred detours, delays as a part of your development, and disappointment, listen, as data, not your destiny, as data, not your destiny. All right. So I just want to say good morning. Good morning. My why is because I see too many brilliant people, capable people aren't, I see brilliant people capable who aren't stopped by their obstacle itself, you guys. They're stopped by the story that they tell themselves about the obstacle. So today it's about reclaiming your voice in the middle of all the mess. All right. Life will detour you, right? So life has detours, but the narrative you choose can either become the cage, right? It can become your cage or your catalyst. Listen, the disclaimer for today is that this session will help you identify the unconscious stories you really attach to these setbacks, all right? And we've all had them. We've all had setbacks. So I really want you to think about these unconscious conscious stories that you've had to your setbacks. But true resilience is really built not just by noticing the stories, you guys, but by consciously rewriting them. By consciously rewriting them. Listen, you don't get to control every obstacle. You don't get to control every obstacle, but you do get to control the meaning you assign to it. All right. So welcome back. Welcome back to Life Lessons. It is Mindset Reset Monday. Okay, and I want to welcome you back to Life Lessons with Dr. Sheila Little, the creator of the Stop and Now method, right? It is Mindset Reset Monday, right? And today we're diving into the quiet but powerful stories you tell yourself when life doesn't go according to plan. All right. Are you narrating that story from fear, or are you narrating it from faith? All right. Today we begin to shift the script. All right. So I want you to do something for me. Drop a word in the chat and let me know, how are you feeling today? All right. How are you feeling today? And if you want to challenge yourself, right? What's one word that you associate with your setbacks? Right? What's one word that you associate to your setbacks? Listen, be honest. Again, this is no judgment. This is a space for us to just be present with ourselves. All right. I know one story that I used to associate to my setbacks was just timing, right? Like it's too late. Um, I always felt like, in my 20s, I only had my 20s, and in my 30s, I only had my 30s. And it was like this thing where I just needed to catch up to life. And the further I got along in my life, I just felt like timing, like I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. And so every setback seemed to trigger me to what? To want to do more, to work harder, to push harder, right? But it was like I was pushing through this resistance because in my mind, it was like, this is another setback that's really setting me back as far as my time. And I mean, I'm 46 now. And so I just feel like I have all the time in the world to do whatever it is I need to do. Right. And really, I had to let that go because it had started to burn me out. So that would be one story that I would have attached that, like I really just need to make it because it's time. And drop a word in the chat for me. Like, what is one of, if you want to, what's one word that you associate to your setbacks? Okay. So let's get present. Let's get present in our bodies. All right, it's Mindset Reset Monday. So let's scan our bodies. We're gonna again, this week is so challenging, right? It's gonna be one of those weeks that you might reflect a lot, right? And so I'm gonna have an affirmation I'm gonna do for you that I really want you guys to kind of take into every session because you know I really do think it's going to be a reflective week. Again, navigating obstacles, we've all had them, and and some of us have attached a story to these obstacles that has defined our identity. And this week is really about separating those two things. So let's get present in our body, but we're going to bring some compassion in today. All right, we're going to bring some compassion into our feet, right, in our legs, you know, um, our knees, just some love and compassion for this body, uh, our thighs, right? Our butts if we're sitting down, just our legs as we stand up on them today as they provide us with stability, right? Just thanking our legs and loving on our bodies, right? Our torsos, all our organs, really just bringing some compassion and love into our organs, right? Some understanding, some forgiveness, if that's what we need to do, right? Into our heart space. Let's fill our hearts this morning, all right? Our hearts are, it carries a lot. So let's feel that and let's bring some grace, right? Some attention to our heart. All right. Our shoulders where we feel a lot of weight, right? Let's feel that kind of lifting off of us this morning, right? This mindset reset morning, you guys, we're going into a new week. All right. An opportunity to show up different. Okay. Different, more bold, more beautiful, right? All right, down our arms, and let's activate our hands this morning. Let's challenge ourselves to do some things and move forward with our hands. Some things that we have on our to-do list, but we haven't really activated our hands to really do the thing. Let's do that this morning. All right, up our necks, right? Feeling our spine, down our backs, right? Feel it kind of align. Okay. All right. Our lips, our nose, just bringing some love to ourselves. I know a lot of us, we're looking for other people to love us, but let's just be present with ourselves this morning. Just love on us, right? I love you. Okay. Our brains activating all of the neurons, right? As we're going through these sessions, we're learning new information, really just pausing and allowing that information to download, right? And then the space around us, our biggest organ, our skin. right? And just breathing in again, just connecting our brains to our hearts to our feet, right? And just connecting our feet back to our heart space again, right? And then to our brain, right? And just kind of seeing some shoot over us and just raining down on us like this love and this compassion. All right, listen, good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Listen, I'm so excited about talking about or wrapping this series up of seizing control of your life with the plan because you know, there's a default I talked about last week. There's a default that we have. It's kind of like we're seeing the dandelions, right? There's a default activation that just naturally happens. And but I do think we've been given a life. And if we want something different, you guys, we really do have to strategically build that life, right? And do the work that's required and stay conscious and present, right? So, who is this session for? This session is for you if you internalize failures or setbacks as personal flaws, all right? All right. If you believe obstacles mean you're doing something wrong, this session is for you. If you hesitate to dream big again because you fear another disappointment, right? And this is for you if you're ready to really stop letting detours define your destiny. All right. Stop letting the detours define your destiny. You know, we talked about the universal laws when we toured this series and we talked about that law of polarity. So I know if there is like if there's a down, good morning, Lewis. I know if there is a negative, there has to be a positive, right? And so many times when we're facing these when we're navigating these obstacles, we only focus on one side of the polarity, right? The resistance, the what I'm not getting, and we're not really giving space for what is there, right? The thing that it did bring you, okay? The thing that it did bring you. All right, good morning, brother. Good morning, a little bit, brother. All right, listen, this is a big week. I want to tell you this. This is a big week energetically, emotionally, and from some of you spiritually, right? So I want you to think about this. This week is about building emotional agility, not just grit, okay? Most people have been taught that either you have to push through pain or suppress your emotions. Listen, that's toxic resilience, all right? So either you have to push through the pain or suppress your emotions. That's really toxic resilience, right? Or they've been taught to shut down and abandon their dreams when obstacles arise. That's toxic fragility, all right? Listen, I want you to really understand the middle of these, right? When we feel it, we face it, and then we flex with it. Okay, we become flexible with it. All right, this is emotional agility. How to really pivot with grace, right, and not grind through the guilt. All right, not really grind through the guilt. All right. Again, number two, this week exposes hidden relationship. It's going to expose your hidden relationship with control and timing. All right. I want you to listen for that. Like, am I trying to control? Listen, when life goes off script, control issues, perfectionism, and fear of being behind, which I told you earlier, right, often surface. All right. Listen, it's not your job to control every variable, right? But what it is your job to do is to stay available for the miracles, for the grace, for the compassion, right? Inside of all the mess. All right, inside of all the mess. Listen, you're not off schedule. You are on assignment. All right. You are not off schedule. You're on assignment. Guess what? Even when it feels uncomfortable, even when it feels uncomfortable, all right. So I want you to kind of think about your chronological obsessions, right? I should be further by now. I shared that was mine. Like I should be further by now, right? The comparison thing that we have, right? Everyone else is ahead of me. I want you to think about these stories, right? The shame spiral that really triggers delay, right? It makes us high. It makes us, not really show up. All right. I want you to really start to redefine winning, right? Winning is not having a perfect time, right? It's not about perfect time, you guys. And it's not about hitting every milestone without struggle. I talked about this before. Like I think when we're younger, so much happens that we really narrate our life and we just like, when I get in control of my life, it's just gonna be amazing and everything is gonna just happen without any hassle. And when life starts to push back, right, and you start to feel the resistance, it starts to challenge a part of us, right? That makes us feel like What am I doing wrong? Like, am I in trouble? Is God mad at me? Am I being punished? Is this karma? And we start to really narrate the situation and personalize it as if it's just not life happening. Listen, willingness really stay in the line even when it's messy. All right. And letting grace, not ego, really steer the ship. All right. Giving ourselves grace. All right. Listen, I want you to really celebrate resilience and being flexible in your emotional endurance and inner peace, right? Over performance. All right. We have to start focusing on our resilience, our flexibility, our emotional endurance, right? Our inner peace over performance. All right. That is the manual side of life. That is the part that we can control. All right. So I'm encouraging you. If you're here, I know you've overcome so much. And what I want you to do is just silently give yourself credit for that, right? Just breathe it in. Yes. You know what I mean? And you're still here, right? Now, the story you have attached to that is associated to how you feel about what you've been through, right? Like life just keeps doing these things. And, if you have that story, it's making whatever you went through 10x worse, okay? It's making it so much worse than probably the experience itself, all right? And we could have went through something 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 3 months ago, and it's still living present in our hearts today because we have narrated it as a part of who we are. We've made it a part of our identity and not just the situation that we went through. Okay, not just the situation we went through. So I want you to think about these words, right? Instead of like keep pushing, right? Because that is like a strong person's thing, right? Listen, I want you to pivot, right? I want you to think about life being that defensive player. And I want you to learn how to pivot with wisdom, right? Always stand 1 foot grounded, right? But you are moving still. You're pivoting around so you can what? Make the shot so you can get the win. So it's not about pushing through because we know that when you push through the guard, that's a foul, right? If you run up to the guard, right, that's a foul, right? So it's not about that. It's about pivoting. It's about standing your ground and then using your skills to pivot and move in a way that's graceful, in a way that's compassionate, right? For you. If that makes sense, put a 1 in the chat. All right. Listen, another language shift that I want to kind of introduce to you is this comment of don't let anything stop you, right? Listen, don't let anything stop you. We've heard that so much, but what does that mean? What does that really mean? Don't let anything stop you, right? Here's what I want you to say: let obstacles refine you, right? Not define you. That's a more graceful way to say that, right? This obstacle is here not to stop me. It ain't even about stopping at all, right? It's really about refinement, right? And it's not about defining you. It's about refining whatever those parts is. Good morning, Miss Jackie. All right. And then the whole idea that you're behind. No, that's not. We're gonna kind of shift that. And we're gonna say you're being built for what you prayed for. I don't care how old you are. I don't care what you've been through. Life is building you for what you prayed for. Listen, these micro shifts in your language will really help you to stay encouraged, right? Without feeling shame. Okay? Because what if you let the thing stop you? Right? What if you let the thing stop you? Do you personalize that? But if I let it refine me, if I know that this is a refining process, I'm probably more amped to engage with it. All right. I'm probably more compassionate about engaging with it because I understand that refinement is a like a putting together teaching learning type of thing. All right. All right. For the people here that the spiritual challenge, right? Listen, I want you to know that the detour is not a punishment, right? It's preparation. All right. The detour is not a punishment, it's preparation. Listen, spiritually, obstacle navigations really teach you that to trust, teach you trust over timelines, right? So that's why patience is a virtue. It really teaches you faith over formula. a lot of times we think, okay, I got the degree, I got this, so that should equal this, right? And we have this formula in our head for, one plus one equals two, two plus two. I said it nice, so they should have did this. I showed up like this, so I should have got that. And we have these outcomes attached to, how we show up and how we say things. But listen, when we're when we're navigating our obstacles, I was going to navigating our navigals. I don't know what that means. When we're navigating our obstacles, it's really about faith over the formula, right? That I'm gonna show up in faith the way that my aligned self of how I want to show up, and I'm gonna take the formula out of it, all right? And then it's presence over perfection, just showing up, right? Just being present as much as you possibly can. Because listen, sometimes God will delay the vision, but He won't deny it, right? The entity won't deny the vision, but to develop enough, but God will not deny the vision, but He will develop it enough to really for you to carry it out, all right? For you to carry it out with grace, right? And so even having compassion in how we show up, okay? Right? That's a part of our development, right? Because it's not about attaining the goals, you guys. It's about sustaining the goals. All right. We hear a lot of people hit the numbers. This coming up in my spirit, hit the lottery for $1 million, they lose it all, right? So it wasn't about hitting the lottery. It's about could you sustain that wealth? Right? We hear about a lot of people who get married, get in relationships, but can you sustain the relationship? Right? It's not about getting a job. Okay, you got it. Now, can you keep the job? All right, because when we that moves to a different part of the brain. All right, listen, your character is being strengthened in every detour. All right, and your trust is being sharpened when the path doesn't really make sense. All right, it's being sharpened, you're being more sharpened, you're being more refined. But guess what, that process is not happening when you're in the lens of victimhood, that this is happening to me, right? Right, like life is happening to me. So the process of refinement is not really happening. It's as if you're bucking against the system. All right, so again, resistance may rise up as I come and talk to you this morning, all right? But I want you to know that this is a good sign, right? This is a good sign. So you may get quiet. I might not get a lot of engagement this week. That's okay. All right. I just want you to stay present and listen, right? You may start to doubt yourself again. I just want to prepare you for that, right? Because you're going to start thinking about some stuff. But again, I want you to give yourself some grace, all right? Okay, because navigating obstacles, you're going to think about the obstacles, and I'm going to challenge you to think about those obstacles. All right. And some of you may project on some old frustrations, right? But I really want you to focus on some new opportunities. So again, we can't take new information and apply it to an old situation. All right, we really just can't take the old situation. I mean, we can't take new information and apply it to an old situation. So let's try to stay as present as possible this week as we talk about obstacle navigation or navigating these obstacles. Okay, I do want to say that life is about grieving, right? So you may have some dreams and things like that. So I do want to let you know that I'm here to hold a space for that, right? So I'm gonna hold a space for the grief, right? All of the should have beens that you're thinking should have been, right? A lost dream, a delayed desire, or a missed opportunity. It's okay. All right. It's okay to grieve those things. All right. But I want you to start grieving them without shame, right? So it's because this is how we're going to move forward. It's okay, right? That's a dream I had. I can let that go, and then I can have a feeling about letting that go. All right, if that makes sense, put a one in the chat for it, because this week is not about resilience. It's not just about resilience. This week is about resiliency, guys. It's not about resistance. It's about really stepping in. All right. It's about progress over perfection and partnership with your purpose, not punishment for your imperfection. Okay. All right. All right. All right. So listen, here's our powerful quote for this morning. Obstacles are not the end of your story. All right. They are where your story deepens. All right. Obstacles are not the end of the story. They are where your story deepens. All right. So I do want to add this affirmation. I want you to say this. I am not defined by my detours, right? I'm not delayed by my disappointments. Every obstacle is an opportunity to really deepen my alignment, right? I trust the path, even when I can't see the plan. right? I am built for resilience, refined by grace, and led by divine timing. All right. So today I choose to move. I choose movement over fear, peace over pressure, and really purpose over perfection, you guys. Purpose over perfection. All right. So that's our guiding affirmation for this week. Listen, I want you to pause, really think, take that in, and take a breath in, right? And trusting that this is true for you, right? And then releasing control, okay? Releasing control. Now, let's drop a five in the chat if you like that affirmation for me, or drop a heart in the chat if you like it. Because listen, a woman I once coached had been building her business for the last 2 years, right? When a major contract had fell through. All right. She immediately told herself, I'm not cut out for this. Maybe this dream isn't for me. So she started to spiral. Not because the opportunity ended, you guys, but because our internal story said failure equals finality, right? So failure equals the end of this thing, right? When we reframed it together, what she realized is that lost contract, you guys, wasn't a rejection. It was a redirection, right? It freed her to pivot into a market that actually aligned better with her values. All right. 2 years later, she's thriving in a way that she never would have imagined if she would have stayed stuck in that old story. Listen, the contract didn't break her dream, you guys. Her belief about the contract did. All right. Her belief about the contract did. All right. All right. So I want to do our check in, right? What is one plan didn't go that didn't go how you expected? All right. And what silent story did you start believing because of it? All right, think about that. What's one plan that didn't go how you expected? And then what silent story did you start believing because of that? Listen, I want you to know that the situation was real. All right, the situation you experienced was real, but the story is optional. All right, setbacks are inevitable, you guys, right? The meaning, though, the meaning you assign to them isn't. All right. Know, most people intellectually know that everything happens for a reason, but emotionally, right, they feel abandoned, they feel punished or forgotten when plans fall apart. All right. Before you can really rewrite your story, like you need to validate your emotional experience first. All right. We need to get comfortable with validating our emotional experience first. Listen, it's okay to be disappointed. It's okay to grieve what you thought would have happened, right? But it's not okay to let the disappointment define your destiny. I work with so many people who got disappointed in a relationship, right? Who got disappointed at a job, who failed a class in school, right? As a college counselor, I work with a lot of people who couldn't like pass the science or the maths, right? And they just felt like, well, maybe school isn't for me. And it's like, well, no, maybe you need to change your study habits, right? Maybe you need to, get with a tutor. Maybe you need to use more of the library resources, right? So that you can get the information that you need to pass the class, right? In the relationships, maybe that relationship was there to mirror something about you that you needed to heal, if you're still carrying that story. All right. So, but I've seen so many people just give up, right? Listen, it's not okay. It's not okay to let the disappointment really define your destiny. All right. Um, why this matters because if you don't reclaim your narrative, listen, the obstacle will become a wound that you keep reliving instead of wisdom that you can build on. All right. Again, if you don't reclaim the narrative, the obstacle will become a wound you keep reliving instead of a wisdom that you can build on. Freedom comes when you realize I can outgrow old endings, right? I can outgrow old endings. All right. A client shared with me one time that once I stopped believing, once I stopped believing every no was a judgment for me. Once I stopped believing that every no was a judgment for me, I found a space for better yeses. All right. I built my career and my confidence, right, on pivots. right? She really started to realize that every no wasn't a judgment, it wasn't a rejection, right? She started to find yes, she started to find spaces for her yes, you guys. And instead of what pushing through, filing, right, charging, right, she started to pivot, right? What does this mean, right? Where else could I move, right? While staying grounded. And I want to, and the reason I'm using the word pivot is because if anybody do sports, we know what a pivot is. One foot stay on the ground, right? We're not traveling, right? We're staying grounded in a truth, right? That I'm beautifully, wonderfully made, that this process is a learning process, right? And I'm moving around, all right, until I can find a space, what, to go through, to move forward, to drop, to take that, um, to take that dribble, right? To move past this defender. Okay, does that make sense? All right, listen. Cognitive behavioral therapy studies show that reframing the meaning of setbacks reduces depression, increases resilience, and empowers faster recovery after disappointment. Listen, your last obstacle doesn't define your next outcome, you guys. Your last obstacle does not define your next outcome. And I need you to believe that. All right? All right. Drop a heart in the chat if you believe that on this morning. All right. We all know that the S in stop it stands for stories, right? Because before an obstacle ever because before an obstacle ever stops your steps, right? It stops your spirit, right? It stops your spirit with a silent story. With a silent story. Listen, rewriting a story, rewrite that story, reclaim the strategy, and really revive your stamina, right? For life. Really revive your stamina for life. Listen, I want you to know that there's a difference between a story and a situation. All right. There's a difference between a story and a situation. And many people confuse this. All right. Many people confuse the situation, which in a case could be the business deal fell through. Right. That's just a neutral fact. Versus a story, which is I must not be cut out for this. That's an emotional interpretation of what the situation. And we are emotionally interpreting our life from a space, you guys, that is keeping us stuck, that's keeping us without moving. Listen, I want you to separate the events that has happened in your life from your identity. All right. The storm happened, but the storm doesn't mean that you don't deserve the harvest. All right. The storm happened, but it doesn't mean that you don't deserve your harvest. All right. I want to empower you to really write a new story in real time. Okay. It's one thing to really reflect. It's one thing to really reflect, but it's another thing to immediately practice narrative ownership. All right, narrative ownership. Listen, right now, I want you to pick one plan in your life that isn't going as expected. Just think about that. What's happening right now that's not going as expected? All right. So this, and I want you to think this isn't proof that I'm failing, right? It's proof that I'm flexible, right? How do we know you're flexible? Because you're adapting, right? You're using coping skills. You're using something to what? To get through it. All right. Now here's the kicker. It's how. Okay, I want to go back to the pivot, right? So I can charge the defender, right? And maybe the ref didn't see it. Okay. Or I can develop the skills to pivot around the situation. And so when we're rewriting the story, it's how do I stay grounded in my truth, right? And that's my proof of flexibility, right? So I'm not failing, I'm flexible. And where can I be more flexible at? Sometimes that's in me just accepting people for who they are. Sometimes maybe this is something that's refining me. What is this teaching me about me? Sometimes it's about asking yourself quality questions, and it may be the situation that what sends you to therapy, have encourages you to seek out a mentor, encourages you to get a coach, encourages you to go talk to your friends. I had a client on Friday who's going through a tremendous situation in her family, um, and she has she's going through the situation in her marriage, and she has a very supportive mom and a very supportive sister and a very supportive friend. but she's performing for them because she doesn't want them to feel a way about her husband. And so she's coming to see me every week. And I'm saying, this is good, right? That you're coming to talk about this, but you have a community there to support you, and you're allowing shame not to allow you to activate your community, right? Of how they're going to feel about your husband. Listen, that's your mama, that's your sister, that's your friend, right? So you don't even have to talk about your husband in a negative way, but I do encourage you to talk about your feelings, right? I do encourage you to tell them that you need support as an individual, right? And really use them to help you navigate through this, because our sessions is 45 minutes, every week, but you have them and you're talking to them every day, right? But again, because her emotional person, right, because she has this shame about what she's going through, and she's trying to perform and make them think that she has something, or that the husband is this kind of way, and she's built that. Now she's built a wall that she can't even get through, you know? And so I want us to really think about um activating this space where we are not allowing our stories to really hold us back as we're navigating these obstacles in our life. All right. All right. Listen, your story really determines your stamina. All right. It's not the obstacle that wears you down, you guys. It's the story you tell yourself about the obstacle. Listen, if you tell yourself that this is proof that I'm not good enough, you're gonna shrink. All right, you're gonna shrink back to the 2 year old you, the 5 year old you, the insecure you. Okay, but if you tell yourself that this is preparing me for something bigger, guess what you're gonna do? You're gonna dig deeper, right? The mind is going to help you to shape that and navigate that. All right, listen, obstacles don't stop people, right? But your stories do. What you telling yourself about the obstacle will absolutely stop you. All right. Listen, every obstacle really offers two scripts. All right. Script one is our default. All right. This always happens to me. I never get it right. Why try? People always talking about me. People always doing this to me. Right. That's our default. Right. And that default is going to come from one of four paradigms. And I talked about the emotional intelligence paradigms, from our victim paradigm, from a duty paradigm, from achievement paradigm, or from an integrity paradigm. All right. And most of us have a victim paradigm where life is happening to me, right? Listen, but we have another script, and that's our decisive script. All right. We talked about indecision yesterday, but being decisive, this is a part of the process. Okay. I'm learning skills that sustain me. I will not abandon myself, right? Right. Here's the thing. This is going to be tough, but I have what it takes in my resources. All right? So maybe I need to talk to somebody like I encourage my client to do, right? Maybe I need support, right? Maybe I need to journal. Maybe I do need to shift and change. All right. All right. But I'm not going to abandon myself in whatever my need is, right? The choice between your default and your decisive thinking starts with how you navigate the moment, you guys. All right. So when you shift the story, you shift your ability to keep moving. All right. If you tell yourself that this is not right, like it's just guess what? That you can literally feel the momentum stop. You can literally feel the the doubt set in. It reminds me yesterday, my son, he's 16, he asked for his dad car, and he was like, "Can I get the car so I can go and, get my phone fixed?" And his dad is like, "Well, did you do your room? Did you get all the stuff out your room like I told you?" And I saw my son just shrink, right? Like I saw him get like, his shoulders went down, his head kind of went down. And my son like 6'3", you know. So I called him back. I said, "Hey, come here." He came back in and I said, "Listen, your dad gave you redirection. The same shoulders, broadness that you asked for the request, whatever he requested back, right? Stand in that. Because guess what? You need to do that. That's it's not it may feel like he's rejecting you, but he's not. He's giving you a path. He's saying, hey, if you want to do that thing, then go do this thing first, right? So just receive that, but don't shrink, right? Because now you like, oh, I gotta go do the room, right? It was just redirection. So go do the room, go get the stuff, come back. You know what I mean? And then make your request. And if he send you to do something else, then go do that. But do it with your shoulders high, right? Like you're receiving that information and not shrinking like you lost because you didn't. You got requested to do something before you can actually do the thing that you want to do. All right. Because you want to do that. He don't want to do that. He got what he want you to do, and you got what you want to do. All right. And it's an equal exchange of energy. So he's asking you to do this, go do it. But do it with pride. Stand up with your back straight. You know what I mean? Don't shrink because you didn't get the yes because of what you desire. Right. And I'm always redirecting them like that because life is not going to answer yes at your first request. Right. Your parents is not going to answer yes. Your job may not answer yes, but it will give you a request. Go do this. Go strengthen that. Go do this, right? And that's not a rejection. That's not a no. That's a KNOW. Okay. Know that you need to prepare more. Know that you need to do something else before the yes can come up. Does that make sense? If that makes sense, put a one in the chat for me. All right. Listen, so again, when your story shift, right, your ability to move starts to shift. All right. Listen, old survival stories can sabotage really new seasons in your life, you guys. I really want you to hear me say this. Old survival stories can sabotage new seasons in your life. Listen, most people facing obstacles today aren't reacting from the current difficulty, right? They're reacting from the old pain pattern. All right. A childhood story where failure meant shame, right, may cause you to now fear any setback. Okay. Think about that. A childhood story where failure meant shame to you, right? You might didn't get, the grades, or you didn't get the new shoes, or whatever that was, right? That failure meant shame to you. So now it causes this fear of like setback, like everything has to happen how I want it to happen. Why? Because I want to prove what? That I'm worthy, that I'm enough. And here's the thing, you already worthy and enough. So you don't have to prove that. All right. Everything you're doing is just there to validate who you are. It's not to prove who you are. All right. Listen, in past stories where and also past stories where being wrong led to punishment. We talk about this. I talk about this all the time with people, especially my men and women, but I really see it in men, right? As boys, you got in trouble a lot, right? You got whooped for climbing the fence. You was doing something you wasn't supposed to do, right? You didn't clean up the room, right? So you probably was constantly on punishment. You was constantly because you were mischievous, right? You wanted to do what you wanted to do, how you wanted to do it, right? You were sneaky, right? So you got in trouble a lot and got in punishment a lot. And you couldn't go out with your friends and ride the bike. You had to hear them, ride the bikes. You know what I mean? You had to see your friends do some stuff, right? So the story of being wrong led to punishment. Okay, you did something wrong, so you're on punishment. What it does today, though, in your spirit, is it makes you panic when obstacles arise, right? And the first thing you're thinking is, if I'm in trouble, somewhere, shape, or form, am I in trouble? And when you start it, like if it may be your girl, your wife, or your someone in a relationship really asking you a question, like, we need to talk. Oh, here we go. Right? It's this feeling of, what did I do wrong? Right? And if that is the narrative that comes up for you every time it's time to have a difficult conversation, every time, it's time to challenge yourself, that you're processing, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? Listen, that's a childhood wound. All right. That's a childhood wound. And for my women, the same way. We got in trouble differently for being wrong. Okay. But again, when you're being called out, when somebody is redirecting you or holding you accountable, and the first story is, what did I do wrong? Maybe it's just refinement. Maybe you didn't do anything wrong, but maybe it's a preference, right? Maybe your boss preferred it done a different way than what you did it. Maybe your mate prefer the conversation go a different way. It's not that what you did was wrong, it's just preference. All right. All right. You have preference and people have preference. All right. So it's not about being wrong or right, but because again, we got in trouble, which led to punishment, it makes us panic now, right? When new obstacles occur. All right. If that makes sense, put a two in the chat. Listen, obstacles don't just test your goals, right? They test your healed identity. All right. When the obstacle comes, will you deflect to an old survival story, or will you be willing to take that opportunity to write a new one, right? To write a new one that really aligns in the growth of the person that you're becoming. Or listen, navigating obstacles really requires story flexibility. All right. You must be willing to say, maybe the plan changed, but the purpose didn't. Okay. Maybe the route shifted, but the destination remains. All right. Maybe this looks messy now, but it's still meaningful. All right. Listen, flexibility in your stories is what produces resilience in every step. Okay. And this is that thing between control, right? Like trying to control every step, everything, like how people do things, right? We have to kind of sometimes relinquish this control and know that it's safe. It's safe, right? We're safe. We're safe. Thank you, Miss Jackie. All right. Listen, I want you to think about stories equal strategy and strategy equals stamina. All right. Listen, change the story you're telling yourself. All right. Then adjust the strategy based on truth, not trauma. You hear me talking about this a lot. Are you speaking from your wounded self or your wise man? Are you speaking from your wounded person or your wise woman? All right. All right, listen. So change the story you're telling yourself, adjust the strategy based on truth, not on trauma, right? And then strengthen your stamina to really walk in it without quitting on yourself, you guys. You deserve it. You deserve it. All right. So stop quitting on yourself because you deserve that thing you desire. Listen, in short, obstacles really help you rewrite your plans, but they don't have to rewrite your identity. All right. Things are gonna happen, right? I know you said by the time you was 40 you wanted this, and by the time you was, 45 you wanted that, and by the time you was 30 you wanted this, right? And things this didn't go as planned. It doesn't mean it's never gonna happen for you, but if you tell a story that it's never gonna happen for you, then the likelihood of it happening, that story being true, is 100% because you're not going to do anything to activate it. But if you can believe that every obstacle was there to help you and refine you to get the thing that you desire, then you're looking through different windows. You're looking in the living room instead of the dining room. Okay. You're looking in the kitchen instead of the bedroom, right? You're expanding your territory to really get the resources that you need, right? To become the individual to actually attain a thing, to sustain it. All right. I want you to know that stories can be rewritten, but only if you name them first. All right. Stories can be rewritten only if you name them first. Again, many people are unaware that they're even telling themselves stories. All right. We're so unaware that we are narrating these events. If you was here last week, I talked about the narrator. Like as you're talking to me, as you're listening to me, there's a person narrating what I'm saying. There's a voice. I'm sorry, narrating what I'm saying. Right? Maybe how I'm moving my hands. Maybe how my hair is today. Maybe that's whatever. Right? There's a narrator that's narrating that experience, this experience that you're having right now. All right. All right, listen, you're you have to understand um that these are not facts. All right? These are not facts. All right. This is what happened. That's the situation. This is what I decided. This is what I decided it meant about me. That's a story. All right. Again, you have to understand the difference between a situation, this is what happened, and the story that you're telling yourself about what happened. And if your story, and when we get to patterns, you're going to see that a lot of your stories, if they're similar, like they did this to me, or people always doing this, and we're using those very generalized statements, it's a pattern. It's the lens that you're experiencing life through. And every time you see life or a situation, is really being refined through the same lens. Okay. I want you to know that you can write you can write that old script. You can write the old script, right? You can rewrite your old script because listen, the wrong story creates the wrong strategy. All right. If you believe, if you believe a wrong story, like I'm always behind or I'm messing up everything, guess what? You will set smaller goals for yourself, right? You make fear-based decisions and then you sabotage real opportunities when they come. All right. If the story is contaminated, guess what? The strategy will also be compromised. It's so important that we understand, that this is so important that we understand the wrong stories create the wrong strategies. If I'm in victimhood, if I'm in a paradigm where I feel like life is against me, my strategy for that story is going to be what? To protect and defend myself, right? To get through. That's like, you know, I'm a file you. Going back to the pivot, I'm a file you, right? And I'm gonna justify my file, right? I'm gonna justify my file because you was all over me, right? Because I'm in a paradigm where I feel like life is happening to me, that life is bad, that you can't trust people. And if that's my story, then my strategy now is like really now I'm watching for when people lie, maybe recording their calls and like, putting other people in to listen. It gets very, yeah, it gets very, I'm using this word softly, but very toxic in your approach, right? Because the story is wrong. So your strategy now is going to be wrong. Listen, I want you to understand again, if the story is contaminated, then the strategy will always be compromised. All right. So I, so this hopefully will help you um to do some internal cleanup, right? Before trying to fix the external problems, right? Because if you've been using strategies that are compromised, right? And you have stories that are contaminated, then we need to fix that before we can solve anybody. Before we can address any external situation, we need to go in and clean that up. All right. All right. Listen, there's a difference between painful truths and poisonous stories. All right. Painful truths is, this plan didn't work out the way I hoped. That's pain. That's a painful truth. But a poisonous story is this means I'm a failure and nothing ever works for me. That's poison, right? That's like you taking that in and it's like slowly killing your aspirations and your goals. It's like carbon monoxide. You don't even see it, but you breathing it and you speaking it over yourself every day. So there's a difference between a painful truth about a situation that didn't go out as planned or a person that didn't show up how you wanted them to show up. But when we make that painful truth a poisonous story about who we are and we tie that into our identity, guess what? That poisonous story, it starts to what? It starts to make us step back. It starts to make us numb. It starts to get us stuck in depression and anxiety, and it starts to truly just create a dis-ease. All right. So what we can do in this case is we can grieve the reality, right? We can grieve the reality without really condemning ourselves. All right. And we can honor the disappointment without hijacking our destiny, right? And not attaching that to our identity. Listen, every obstacle doesn't just challenge your plans, it reveals your assumptions about yourself. All right. It reveals the assumptions not just about yourself, but about God, timing, and worth, right? Obstacles sometimes are diagnostic tools. Obstacles aren't just blocking your way. Sometimes they're showing you where your beliefs about yourself need healing. All right. So obstacles are mirrors for your internal narrative. If you didn't face that resistance, you wouldn't even know that you had this belief or this story or this narrative about you or about people. And remember, people are a reflection of you. All right. All right. So graceful talk. So this is what graceful self-talk is required for really navigating obstacles. Listen, the moment an obstacle arises, the tone of your inner talk really determines your outcome. A harsh inner talk really sees, right, your failure, you're failing. It really will say something like, see, you're failing again. You need to quit. I don't even know why you're doing this. But a graceful, compassionate inner talk would be like, breathe. Let's just breathe. Let's reset, right? What's going on, right? You're on the right path. What do you need to do, right? Just a very different response to the same situation. All right. You can pivot without punishing yourself, you guys. That's the basis of that. We can pivot without punishing ourselves. Listen, the bottom line is that we have to normalize the emotional messiness without really glorifying quitting. Okay. We have to empower ourselves to really grieve without making grief our identity. All right. And we have to really anchor in the truth that we can pivot with purpose, without needing to be perfect. All right. We can pivot with purpose without needing to be perfect. All right. If that makes sense, put a three in the chat for me as we go into our biblical wisdom this morning. All right. So our biblical wisdom is our principal verse, Romans 8 and 24. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him. All right. The reflection for this is that the thing that feels like a detour might be a divine delivery. All right. It might be a divine delivery route. All right. What this means for today's session is that, listen, the event is real. The event is real, but the meaning can be redemptive, right? When something doesn't go as planned, the human instinct is to think, this means I'm off course, this setback proves I'm failing, or maybe I've missed out. But listen, Romans 8 and 24 is saying that everything will feel good. Isn't saying that everything will feel good. So Romans 8 and 28 is not saying that everything will feel good. It's not saying that everything will be easy. It's not saying that every plan will work um in the way you want it to. What it's saying is that every experience, even the messy, unexpected ones, guess what, can be used for your good if you stay aligned with your purpose, you guys. Listen, here's some practical reframes. Just because it hurt really doesn't mean that it harmed your destiny. Just because it hurt doesn't really mean it harmed your destiny. Listen, this setback may actually be setting me up for something I couldn't have engineered on my own. Okay. Listen, the God within us is still working, even when the work looks messy. All right. It's not rejecting, it's redirecting with deeper wisdom, you guys. It's redirecting with deeper wisdom. So again, Romans 8 and 24. And we know that all things, okay, works for the good of those who love him. All right. The principal verse, which is Proverbs 24 and 16. Though the righteous fall 7 times, they rise again. Okay. The reflection for this is that your worth is not measured by how many times you fall. All right. But by your willingness to really rise and rise with wisdom. All right. Listen, falling doesn't disqualify you. Staying Falling doesn't disqualify you. Staying staying down does though. Okay. Most people internalize one fall, right? One failed plan, right? As proof that they're not good enough or righteous enough or worthy enough. But this proverb really flips the narrative, right? Falling isn't failure, falling is human, and getting back up is where your authority is revealed, you guys. Listen, here's a practical reframe for you. Setbacks don't remove your righteousness, okay? Setbacks don't remove your righteousness. Falling doesn't cancel your calling. And listen, resilience is righteousness in action. All right. It's not about pretending that you didn't fall. All right. The scriptures say you fall 7 times, right? But you get up, okay? So it's not about pretending that you didn't fall. It's about choosing to rise, right, with more wisdom than you had before you failed. All right. Listen, these scriptures together really create a powerful emotional map. Listen, when plans fall apart, which means I'm off track, right? The scripture is saying when I'm off track, no, God is still weaving. good out of this. All right. That is what Romans 8 and 28 is saying. When things fall apart and you may say, I'm off track, the scripture is saying, no, God is still weaving good out of this. All right. Listen, when you say I'm a failure, Proverbs 24 and 16 is saying, no, falling is human and rising is divine, is holy. Okay. And then when you say it's over for me, listen, both of these, this promise verse and this principle verse is saying, no, you're still called, you're still chosen, and you're still covered. All right. You are not starting from scratch, you guys. You're starting from wisdom. Listen, God isn't outside your obstacle. God, He's inside your opportunity to really rise. All right. To really rise. All right. All right. Um, so I want you to tell yourself this. My story is not over. It's being reauthored, right, with wisdom. It's being reauthored with wisdom. And how do we put that into action this morning? How do we put that into action this morning? So let's go into our integration. Okay. So our action steps for today's session is listen, action steps. Identify one failed plan you still carry disappointment over. All right. And then I want you to name the story you told yourself about that. It could be a recent one, it could be an old one, it doesn't matter, right? And then I want you to write a story that aligns with growth, grace, and purpose. This is going to challenge you because I want you to think about what you learned from it. You, not the people that was, not the judgment of people, but what did you learn? So write a story that aligns with grace, with growth, grace, and purpose. All right. Your journal prompt: what would I create next if I believe I lost? If What would I create next if I believe my last obstacle was preparing me, not punishing me? All right. What would I create next if I believe that my last obstacle was preparing me and not punishing me? All right. And then your affirmation for today on this Mindset Reset Monday. All right. The affirmation is I can pivot with purpose, right? I can pivot with purpose. I can move with meaning, all right? And I can navigate with grace, all right? And then our intention, which is just really how we set the tone for this Monday, how we set the tone for this Monday. It is today, I narrate my life from possibility, right? Not from pain. Today, I narrate my life from possibility, not from pain. And if you want to do a bonus challenge today, you know, you can share one old story you're releasing. All right. After hearing uh after hearing this, share one story that you're releasing and one new truth that you're claiming on this Mindset Reset Monday. All right. Share one old story. Hold on, I'm gonna put it up here. One old story and one old story you're releasing, and then one new truth. And you all know that I'm gonna do a call and a challenge and a charge. Okay, so I'm calling this morning and I'm asking you, listen, what old story are you releasing today? What old story are you releasing today? And then my challenge, right? So my call is, what old story am I releasing today? My challenge to you on this Mindset Reset Monday is, what's the new truth that you're ready to build from? All right. And then I charge you to go shape your life with resilience, with clarity, and with conviction. All right. Listen, if today's session really help you see your setbacks differently, right? And you're walking away with some insight today. You already know what to do. Drop a fire in the chat for me on this morning, right? Let's celebrate our growth this morning on this Mindset Reset Monday. All right. And if this session is something, woke up something in you, that's exactly what we do in those coaching labs, in those weekly coaching labs. We don't just reflect, you guys, we help to what reshape your life. All right. I want you to know that I want you to remember that if you can shape it in your mind, you guys, you can have it in your life. I love you. I love you. I love you. And I will see you tomorrow for Transformational Tuesday, where we're talking about triggers. Listen, what setbacks really make you shut down? All right. What are those setbacks that really make you shut down? All right. I love you. I'll see you tomorrow for that life lesson. Till later.